Good afternoon. It is 3 p.m. on Thursday, March 27th, 2025. And this regular meeting of the Sandpoint Urban Forestry Commission is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Commission Chair Mose Dunkel presiding. Also present are Vice Chair Chase Youngdahl and Committee Member Preston Andrews. Paige Belfry and Jeff Gregory are both absent at this time. In addition to our board members, City Council Liaison Kyle Schreiber, City Staff Liaison Eric Bush, and Board Clerk Samantha Branscombe are also present. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our March 6th meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Minutes are approved as presented. Before we proceed, for any members of the public in attendance, which there are none, and do we have anybody on Zoom?
No.
Just me? Okay, then I'm going to skip this portion. If there were people here, they would be allowed to have 3 minutes to speak on topics that are not on the agenda. And since there's nobody here, we'll move on. Old business. Staff will provide an update to the downtown parking lot project, which we spent a considerable period talking about last meeting. So hopefully it's not that considerable. Yeah.
So give me a second to share my screen. But at the end of last meeting, I told the commission that we would let you know where we landed on everything with respect to the final drawings. Basically, we included the everything that the final motion landed on that was included for saving trees is what we saved. And everything else was excluded. And I think we will be in pretty good shape. While I'm getting that up, we had a pre-bid meeting this morning. We had a bunch of contractors there and a lot of interest. So that is great news. And what you will see as soon as my screen comes up here in a second is we made the islands quite large, which is excellent. So, can everyone see that all right? Okay. So cedars on the bottom left of the page, southeast corner of the lot. That island is pretty much a little bit larger, different shape, but a little bit larger than it is currently. This is the maple that was selected. That will be in kind of a tree well. And then the 2 spruces on the north end, the existing islands. Those have nice big islands as well. Each of those will be poured with curb. So we won't have, we'll minimize tire tracking into the kind of tree area, the tree island. So that's basically what we landed on. We've got 2 new trees that will be going in kind of to match the existing maple in the kind of western central portion. And then an additional tree we'll plant on the southwest corner of the lot. These 2 are not included in the current bid. It typically doesn't favor us to have excavation contractors plant trees. So we'll hire someone else after the project, after the asphalt work is complete and all that stuff is wrapped up. We'll get a tree company out there or a landscaper, nursery, what have you, to get those trees planted as well. So with that said, bids are due on April 3rd. We have a special council meeting scheduled for April 9th to get this awarded earlier than would normally be awarded with a normal council meeting date, just so we can meet those deadlines and get this project done before the middle of May when Lost in the 50s comes up. So any questions?
Does that timeline still put it on track to be finished by Lost in the 50s?
It does.
Okay.
Yep. That's why we requested a special council meeting for exactly that reason. So short of weather concerns, which this time of year you never know, we should be okay.
The species that are, the trees that are gonna be put in those two places, that's to be determined still.
That's TBD. We'll probably include that on next month's agenda and we can kick around some species and figure out what we want to put there. I'll try and pull like the plants that are available from Bonners Ferry Nursery, a couple of the other suppliers locally, what they have. And maybe we just kind of shoot with what's available and then we can select a couple and get them in the ground. We can choose two of the same, we can choose two different. Whatever direction we want to go. That's all I've got here. Any other questions?
The tree wells for those two trees will be the same as the ones without, but maybe just gonna be full of light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a little bit smaller, but they could also be upsized in the future.
Yeah, that would be my only comment, just those look a little small, but if we could make them a little bigger without taking away any part.
Yeah.
That'd be advantageous to the trees in the long term.
There's a possibility, a lot of the way this bid was structured was to keep costs down.
Yeah.
So if we get, say our bids come in lower cost than we expect. If we have budget flexibility, which I'm skeptical that we will, but if we do, we could, have them pour those curb areas a little bit larger, and hold some of the asphalt, and then we'll keep, we can get a larger tree wall then.
Yeah, maybe particularly the one on the southwest corner, because that would match the other three existing larger trees.
Yeah.
Is this the urban forestry?
It is.
Hey,
So open to general public participation.
Yeah.
Snow removal will be pushed snow throughout the whole lot. There's no like stoppers at each,
No, we're not doing bumper blocks. So between the two central, here and here, or here and here, you'd be able to just push snow from east to west or west to east. This was laid out with that in mind to make it easier for our plow guys to get in there and clean that parking lot up during a big storm.
Make that corner then too with the cluster of cedar
Yeah,
there on the church side.
yeah.
okay, any discussion? Questions, comments? Thank you, Eric. Next, we will discuss the arboricultural manual and heritage trees. I'm not sure if we make that two separate discussions, or if we want to pick one to start with, or are we discussing heritage trees as it pertains to the manual?
I guess we could go either way. I see from a kind of a logical standpoint, I think there's a lot of merit in an update of the arboriculture manual, including a more robust definition for heritage trees. They could also be separate. We could also just define a definition for heritage trees and some of the other kind of categories that we were discussing. And that could be kind of a standalone thing, or we could amend that into our urban forestry master plan. It also seems to me to make a lot of sense that just rides along with the manual. I'm up for ideas though.
I would defer to the commission for your thoughts on how we want to proceed with that for discussion today. And I don't think we're probably not gonna make any concrete decisions today.
does the heritage trees, is that a separate in the code from the arboriculture manual, or can it be both?
I think it'll be included in it. And I think that's the emphasis is that we don't have a heritage tree definition or area that addresses that. And I think at this point, it's fairly wide open on how we would like to see that included and how that would maybe steer policy on how those trees And how they're treated as far as, are they gonna be setback changes or setback trades? They can help keep certain trees that are valuable to the community or valuable to neighborhoods to not be taken out for development or have to be cut down because of a setback requirement. I think it's from my experience on this topic, that's the emphasis, is that some setback requirements could make it to where a tree would have to be removed when there should be other options. And the heritage tree definition would enable that to be a possibility for homeowners to leave a tree. Maybe a sidewalk gets manipulated or a setback gets changed a little bit, so the tree doesn't have to be cut.
That's allowable, as far as you know, that kind of nation with a setback.
Well, I don't think Sandpoint has that, but I think, Land Use Planning Act, what does that say? As far as the heritage tree setback exchange, I'm just kind of.
I think like as far as code and the items you're talking about where a tree may need to be removed as part of a development for setback requirements or whatever. That's a separate code component than the heritage tree discussion. Now, depending upon what definition we land on for heritage trees and veteran trees or whatever we decide upon. I think they could ultimately be tied together. I think right now they're separate. So there's a couple kind of things. I'm trying to pull up this. I think I finally got it here. There's a couple items that we may want to consider. One, the reason the heritage tree definition came up, I think it was 2 meetings ago, was with respect to our council approved comprehensive plan. They had like a 2-sentence definition for heritage trees, which we all kind of liked and said we just would like to beef it up a little bit. So with that in mind, these are some kind of categorizations here that Paige provided that are additional things we could consider. And if we want to wrap in maybe 6 definitions like this, as opposed to 1 of just heritage, we would then need to define what constitutes mature, notable, heritage, champion, veteran, ancient, etc. And I think there's merit to that, because heritage trees could be anything. If you define a definition for mature trees, which is different than heritage tree, which is different than champion tree, that I think it complicates definitions a little bit, but it also simplifies things a lot, in my opinion. With that said, is there a desire to expand upon a heritage tree definition to additional categories like we have, like is highlighted on the screen here?
Yeah, I think there's merit to that.
Yeah.
Like, there's gonna be inherent differences with all of those, so.
The problem I have with so many definitions is that how do you decide, how do you differentiate? It seems like that 6 may be a lot.
I agree. I think maybe something like 3 to 4
Yeah,
would be helpful. And then we need to, if we're gonna stick on, say, 3 or 4 of these 6, we need to define what those are and how how any tree would be classified under this.
right.
Meaning, does it qualify to be a heritage tree? If so, what are the qualifications? Or does it qualify to be a champion tree? If so, what are the qualifications?
I did a little research on this and found a book that referenced some code for various cities, and one of them that was highlighted was Tumwater, Washington, and they have 4 designations for heritage trees, and they are historical, specimen, and they give the definition for each of these: historical, specimen, rare, and then also significant grove, which I thought was kind of a a nice thing to have,
Significant growth.
grove.
Oh, grove,
Yeah,
interesting.
Like Lakeview Park, kind of consider that a grove. A lot of those are heritage trees. And it seems like that would qualify, maybe Farm and Park would qualify.
Yeah, I like that.
And I can provide this document.
Yeah, please do, and we can upload it on the portal and review it, and then maybe we can all have some time to wrap our heads around that, and maybe next month we can take a crack at some definitions.
Yeah.
Or if we like those that are in that document, maybe we just use those.
I'm sure there are numerous models out there that we could investigate, see what fits best with Sandpoint, I don't know.
Yeah,
But it seems to me, if we are a tree city, we should have a heritage tree designations to note those trees that are significant.
As a standalone category.
Yeah, and we can have a few categories, but
So heritage would be an umbrella.
yeah, that's
And
what,
then all these other ones could fit in there, so one tree doesn't have to fit into every single category to be a heritage tree. It could be a notable tree or the location, or maybe it's rare for Sandpoint.
yeah, I can just read how they define historical. It's a tree which by virtue of its age, its association with, or contribution to a historical structure or district, or its association with a noted citizen or historical event. So that'd be a historical tree. A specimen tree, they define as age, size, health, and quality factors combined to qualify the tree as unique among the species in Tumwater in Washington State. Rare is one or very few of a kind, or is unusual in some form of growth or species. And significant growth, of course, is outstanding rows or groups of trees that impact the city's landscape. That's how they do those 4 categories. But I can say that. Get that to you.
and I like that, and I'm wondering if in lieu of like heritage being the umbrella term, we have like something like notable trees or something like that. And then all those definitions, heritage, I forget all the others, Preston.
Historical, specimen, rare, and grove.
So maybe it's notable trees or some version of notable trees, and then those are all the definitions within that umbrella. Because if we have heritage trees and then all the umbrella, that captures everything else, I think that gets a little muddy,
Yeah.
has potential to anyways.
Yeah, I agree. I think heritage almost makes it sound like it has to be really old or really giant, big or something like that, which in my opinion, I mean, there's so many different species and size, you could have a great oak tree, which might not be anything compared to like a giant ponderosa pine or something like that, but
Yeah, and a lot of that's regional too, right? If you're in the southeast US, you're gonna have a lot larger oak trees than we're gonna have here. So what might be defined as a heritage tree there wouldn't be defined as a heritage tree here and vice versa. So we just need to be careful how we select that.
One of the characteristics you go into other categories. I mean, if we, break it down, a bit more high level and just look at the heritage term. The Webster's dictionary, just the literal definition of heritage is property that descends to an heir. So, I mean, that, what would come to mind would be where the city took a bit of a black eye with the Travers memorial trees there that were removed for the James E. Russell Center. That's a family heritage type of situation, right? That'd be where I think a heritage designation would make sense. It's some of the other characteristics that fall.
Interesting you said that, Chase. When you were describing that definition, I could also make a case, may not be a very good one, but could make a case that heritage as in like one of your children or family members is getting, that property when you die. We could make the case that heritage is we as Sandpoint are inheriting those trees from previous Sandpoint residents. Not necessarily family, but as us living here or working here now, or being a member of the tree commission now, we have inherited all the trees in town from previous generations.
Yeah, some of them are much older than people who live here, so that's a good point.
Yeah, and primarily because I'm referencing like trees in the public right of way or in public
Yeah.
parks. Travers is a little bit unique because it was, you know, previously different property owner, et cetera. But right of way trees or trees downtown or trees in City Beach, those are all publicly owned, right? We all own them as Bonner County taxpayers or Sandpoint taxpayers. So you could adapt that, I think, as well. I just think I like that definition. I think there's a lot of merit to it regardless of which way you interpret it.
Can I ask a question?
Technically, the period for public comment is not open.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I knew that. I hadn't been on this before.
we're all new too, so.
I got a couple things that I think I can add to this discussion. So we do have in our current city zoning code, chapter 715-13, protection of public and private historic and heritage trees, says the historic and heritage tree preservation designation recognizes the significance of trees to the city. A tree may be retained beyond its useful life because of its contribution to the environment and city character. A heritage or historical tree may be designated by the tree committee, which is you guys, in coordination with the historic preservation committee based on the criteria as described in the arboricultural manual. And then in addition to that, we also have a definition of heritage tree in our comp plan that we just adopted, which is a tree or collection of trees that is acknowledged and valued for the exceptional characteristics that set it apart from others. And then I did just look really quick into Lupa to see if there was anything talking about how this might apply. And all I found was that the approval or denial of an application required or authorized pursuant to this chapter shall be based on standards and criteria set forth in the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, or other appropriate ordinance or regulation. So as long as we're applying these regulations uniformly, I think we're okay as far as it goes.
They just leave it up to the governing bodies now, it sounds like.
Right, so council could adopt an ordinance, and as long as we're applying that ordinance fairly evenly to everybody, I don't think there's anything in Lupa that specifically says we can or cannot make exceptions for trees.
And another item, that's probably a little bit cart before the horse, we need to decide on these definitions, but we should also discuss as a part of this conversation, how we want to decide upon what trees and how they're categorized, if so. Meaning whatever categories we decide upon, if it's 3, 4, 6 categories, how are we defining that? Are we putting a sign up around next to these trees so you know this is a champion tree or a heritage tree or what have you? Are we just making a note in our tree inventory so we know internally that those trees have been assigned that category? Something we might want to think about.
I think that's particularly relevant considering that our current code says in coordination with the Historic Preservation Committee, which would probably be the ones that would handle the signage.
Yeah, they could be, especially if it is,
That's Parks and Historic Preservation now.
yeah, if it's defined as, if the ultimate definition of like the heritage tree is a tree of historic value or something to that effect, I think that would kind of kick it, well, after this commission decides, I think that would also require the Historic Preservation Committee to buy in or concur.
I
Other,
do,
other ones that aren't historic, we probably just handle here. What, on all the other designations.
Yeah, with that discussion, it almost feels like the heritage tree fits more into that group than here.
If you end up, scoping other Upton's availability for presentation to this commission, we
I-
discussed that.
I tried, unfortunately, she does not work for the city anymore. So we don't have her at our disposal. It's a bummer. Heather was really awesome at what she did.
Okay, any more discussion on that, or do we need to make some sort of a decision, or?
I don't think we need to make a decision right now. I would say Preston found some really good info. Get that over to us so we can get it on the portal. And then if maybe in the next month, we all just dig a little, see if we can find some other cases like that, other cities or whoever else has taken up this issue and figured it out for their purposes. We can invent a wheel if we need to, but I always would rather use other cases than reinventing the wheel, if they're good cases anyways. So maybe we just do a little research and then we bring this up again next month and continue the discussion.
So these 6 on the screen, these are potential categories that Paige had already identified.
Yeah.
Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
So then we can extract 3 or 4 of those,
Mhm.
and go from there. Probably.
Yeah, I agree, I think 6 is excessive.
Yeah.
In some cases, like the champion could be the same as what Tumwater uses for specimen.
Absolutely.
You could use a different name with the same definition.
Yeah, and I kind of prefer specimen over champion personally,
Oh.
because from like thinking about a arboretum anywhere that has like Morton Arboretum in Chicago, they've got hundreds of specimen trees. And they're called specimen trees for a reason in that context. So I tend to lean towards the specimen definition personally. I like that one, but I'm open to ideas.
So we should get alternatives to talk about things.
I think so. And then maybe we define 3 or 4 of them or whatever number we decide upon and or decide upon those and then apply definitions to them. And since Kyle mentioned some of the code compliance stuff as well, since that is referencing the arboriculture manual, we should utilize whatever definitions we decide upon should be wrapped into that update.
yeah, it says the criteria as described in the arboricultural manual. So basically as we update the arboricultural manual, we should set some criteria that we'll use in the future to designate trees as heritage or historical. And we'll probably end up updating this ordinance as well with if we're gonna add or subtract other categories that we like. I think there's definitely room for that. And I like the idea of adding potential for younger trees, because I can't remember who pointed it out previously that all of the historic or heritage trees today were once young trees, and if we only protect the old ones, eventually they're gonna die and we won't have any young ones to replace them, so.
And a progeny can fall under probably a historic definition, with in the sense of family.
Yeah.
Family heirs, perhaps.
And just, health and suitable location, like in 100 years, is this tree gonna still be here? Probably not, because it's in a terrible location, or yeah, actually, this could be a heritage tree someday because it's the right species in the right location. And if we protect it, it has potential.
And that, I think that info came out of our urban forest master plan when, either our special meeting or our February meeting or January meeting that we talked about. I think that was where that came from. With that said, there is a lot of info in the urban forest master plan that kind of builds upon our arboriculture manual. So when we're talking about updating the arboriculture manual, I think a lot of the work has already been done in our urban forestry master plan. We've just got to adapt it and put it in this document, or just amend our urban forestry master plan to also be our arboriculture manual. Maybe we add a section. I don't know that it really matters. Maybe one document or two I'm not sure.
Probably just as an addendum, the arboricultural manual as an addendum to the master plan.
Yeah,
Of course, master plan might make the most sense.
yeah.
They don't contradict.
Yeah.
Which is they're going to.
Yeah, that's one of the things we should be looking for, make sure we don't contradict that.
And a lot of why I wanted to bring the arboriculture manual here for update is because it was originally adopted in 2002. The science has changed a lot since 2002. So what was best practice for pruning or what have you in 2002 isn't necessarily best practice today.
Yeah.
So that urban forestry master plan is more recent. It has better data and science in it. Not that the other manual is bad, it's just older. So, things have moved on a little bit from that. But point is, I don't think we need a total rewrite. I think we just need to make the two kind of jive and make sure we've got, the current best practices included in this document and upon an update, as opposed to 24 years old best practices.
Tune up, not an overall.
Say that again.
A tune up, not an overall.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can move on. Morning business, a member of the commission has requested fellow commissioners' email addresses. We can discuss and then take a vote. If in favor, then those who wish to have their addresses shared can ask staff to share with the rest of the commission. If a member chooses not to do so, that is their prerogative. They aren't required to do so and can indicate that simply by that they want to simply continue to receive messages regarding the commission business from staff. As we are discussing, just a reminder that when a quorum of commissioners engages in a group email discussion regarding commission business, it can result in a liability to the city as a violation of the open meeting law. And risk negating any future decision by the commission, and possibly ultimately a decision by city council if it is determined that the law was violated. And 2, email communication, including communication using personal email accounts that is related to commission or city business, is subject to Idaho Public Records Law. So that's a lot.
Has this item been reviewed by legal staff?
Yeah, this is.
That's the direction they gave.
So the last part there about if we continue to use our personal email addresses, then if something that we decide on gets litigated, then our emails could be subject to being reviewed. And so if you have other business with your email address, then it may become public record inadvertently or maybe not even inadvertently. And the other, this was brought up, I think at our first meeting, that it's a good idea to create an email address just for this group, and then we could share that, and then hopefully that's all that email address is used for, so it makes it easy to reference stuff. Personally, I know, communication between meetings is nice sometimes for certain discussions, but it does become very, it can become like we had something we have to like we have a hearing, then we can't discuss any of that, correct? Like anything that's coming up that we're gonna, recommend to city council or something, then. We can't discuss anything about that, but we can discuss like the manual and heritage trees, I would assume, and, you know, a lot of stuff like that. So I don't know if having the. I'm just speaking personally too. I don't know if having the communication between meetings is necessary. But I do think that it does open the door for, we could get into a situation where we could violate an open meeting.
It could be done, you just have to be careful. I mean, I guess I don't see any reason to keep my email address secret. Like, I mean, I got a designated one just for this business, but when it comes to going through a thread, back and forth, I mean, that's where you have to really be careful to not conduct serial meetings.
And the direction I was given from Melissa, city clerk, was for email purposes, if, for example, I have something that I need to email out to all commissioners, Sam would email that on my behalf, but that is intended to be, it's not intended to be, hey, what do you guys think about this? And then we end up with an email discussion. It's intended to be, here's information, and it'll be on the agenda next month or something to that effect, not where we're having a chain of communication with each other outside of a public forum. And same goes for members, commissioners as well. If Preston has something that, hey, you guys take a look at this, that's okay. Take a look at this and let me know what your comments, and then we all have 40 emails back and forth. That's not okay. I don't know if that difference makes sense.
Well, it seems to be if we're not gonna use email for like a discussion. It seems simply when we're gonna pass information through Samantha to the portal, then, or to you, then that seems like the way to go. Is there precedent for this in other commissions or committees? in the city?
Well, I've been on a commission for 5 years. I've never needed a different email, but we don't discuss anything at all.
Through email.
It's always, if you're gonna be at the meeting, cool. If you're not gonna be, let us know. And that's pretty much the whole discussion. Or a meeting has been canceled or a meeting is scheduled for. So there's not really any dialogue back and forth. And I like that because it just makes it, there's no gray area at all. And so far, I think that's the way it's been here. So I still think it's a good idea to have a separate email. But like I said, I haven't. Well, you can speak to this, I'm sure. You have a separate email for city council, I think, right?
Yeah, correct. And we do have, the counselors do have each other's emails, and we can, communicate via email with each other. I think, first off, the spirit of the law is that the decision should be debated and made in public. So, like you already said, don't be having a conversation about how we should make a recommendation, for example, in email. But if you were to say, hey guys, I want to talk about this in the next meeting, and just share a resource so that everybody can read it beforehand and come prepared to talk, I think that's totally appropriate. And also, I think that planning and zoning is a little different, because in a public hearing like that, you're only allowed to consider the information that you hear during that hearing. Whereas this, I mean, the reason we tapped you guys is because you have information beyond what is in the information packet. So I think it's definitely appropriate for you guys to be using your past experience and things like that to help guide your decision. Now, when we're talking about an action item, particularly, and especially if we were talking about the committee making a recommendation to council that was allowing, let's say, a developer to relax some rules for their developments, so that would kind of cross over into a land use hearing, that would definitely need to be right along that line and no crossover. But when we're talking about the arboricultural manual, I don't see a problem with you guys sharing resources via email as long as you're discussing the debate is happening on camera, so that if anybody had a question about what the debate was, you could go back and watch it later.
And the caveat to this whole conversation is, for all of us, but mostly you all as commissioners, Preston and Mose could email back and forth. That's okay.
Two members.
Mose and Chase could email back and forth. That's okay. If the three of you are emailing, that constitutes a quorum, and that's not okay. So that's the difference. And my preference would be if, like, for example, the, heritage tree definition, if in the next few weeks we're researching and we find some info, instead of sharing it with the group, share it to me and Sam. We'll get it on the landing page we have, and we'll let everyone know, hey, this is posted on the landing page, review. That way we have, like, there's no question. You found it, you emailed it to us, we posted it and let everyone know that it's posted. And there's no other discussion. The discussion happens in here, like Kyle said.
I like that.
Yeah,
That seems like that would accomplish any of the homework that we might have to do in between meetings.
Yeah.
Because why would you just contact one of us? I mean,
I agree.
if we're sharing information,
Unless there's, unless in a meeting we set, two members as a liaison on a specific task.
right, that's true.
I don't.
But at that time, we could then share the email if we got to that specific situation. I don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in that case, you're gonna come back and show your results too, so. The rest of the commission has to, well, I think to me, even communicating one-on-one, it's like, what are you talking about? Are you trying to maybe get them to make a decision, that you favor, you're lobbying, and maybe it's just not even that deep, but if you start opening the door a little bit, then it can, like I said,
You can try to be persuasive to someone that you like,
yeah.
take your point of view. Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, on P and Z, there's been people on the commission that I'm friends with, and during the time we served together, I pretty much don't talk at all. So it's, if I see him around, but it's, it kind of raises, the level of concern about, what are we doing? Yeah, I'm bringing something to the table as far as experience and knowledge. And, it doesn't need to, we don't need a lobby for, trying to manipulate the situation, because of, who we're working for, so.
Yeah, and I know for me personally, I've been in government for a long time, and nothing I do is private. Everything is subject to public records, emails, files that I have on projects, this or that. So I'm not posting or, sending an email about an individual in a negative manner because it's all public information. I wouldn't do that anyways, but in the world I'm in, that's how it works. And Chase, I'm sure you're used to that same thing. If you haven't worked in government or been used to that, it's not something you're familiar with until there's a legal dispute. And then all your emails are subject to being in a public forum in a legal proceeding.
Everything's discoverable.
Yeah. I used to work with a lawyer who said, don't put anything in an email you don't want to defend publicly. And that's a pretty good, concise line to, if you're fired up and you're hammering out an email about something you're upset about, like, take a pause before you hit send on that thing.
Great.
And, but that's, I think, good for this. You don't have to be upset for that to be a problem. Anything that we discuss in here that is discussed amongst commissioners in an email forum could be subject to a public, records request or public litigation if something went that way. So just be aware of that.
Seems like there's no need to muddy the waters. I'd be in favor of just tabling this for now and then just going, routing through staff onto the portal and should it be necessary to address this down the line, we can take it up again down the line.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable.
Do we need to make I don't know, if a motion needs to be made for that.
So I don't think we need to, technically, I don't think we need to table it. We could just, if there's no motion, then it wouldn't be a motion to vote on, there'll be no action. If we table it, then it could be brought up at another meeting, we could take it off the table. Either way, it's kind of the same, because I think technically if we table it, then it'll be available to pick up anytime in the future. If we don't vote on it, or the motion, nobody moves, then I think it might be kind of dead. Which, if we have a quorum here, then none of us want to make that motion, then,
Only reason I'd suggest perhaps tabling it is, we're short a couple of members, but, it might be good to have the full group to weigh in, but, I mean, I'm doing no way.
I think if we want to table it, we do that, that is a motion. I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right, Mose.
Yeah.
I may be mistaken as well, but
No, that's correct.
Yeah, and I don't know if we,
And it's listed as an action item, so I think we probably, obligated to do something with it.
I think oftentimes they're listed as action items in case you want to take action, because that signals to people in the public that a decision will be made, and if you want to speak out on this item, you need to show up right now, because at the end of the meeting, that decision might be made and never come up again. But I don't think it means you have to take an action, but you definitely could just say, I move to table this item until a future time when we have all the commissioners present, something like that.
yeah, if you want to do that, you can, and if there was a second, then we would vote. I think you should. Because I don't think it's a big deal either way. I don't think it's a bad idea.
I'll make the motion to table, sharing of commissioner member email addresses. And for the time, route through staff to the landing page on the portal. And potentially take this up down the line if there was a desire.
Motion, is there a second? I'll second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We'll vote on this. All in favor? Aye. And nobody opposed, so that, the tabling of that topic is, tabled.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Last item, new business is, a discussion regarding the Arbor Day event. I believe that'll be a staff report.
yeah, so I don't have much as far as a presentation on this item. Arbor Day is coming up in less than a month, April 25th. To maintain Tree City USA status, we need to have an Arbor Day event, and the mayor will do a proclamation at the beginning of the council meeting. Our event does not have to take place on Arbor Day. It can take place anytime throughout 2025. Historically, we've done them in the summer. So we could choose a date. If you all would like, we can say we want to do it sometime in midsummer. We can do whatever we would like to. We just need to have an event this year at some point.
With just thinking about the project with the city parking lot and the amount of effort we put into salvaging some of those trees. And then maybe with the new trees being planted there. And then along with, I don't know what the Travers, park tree situation is, if there's new trees have been put in. And are going to continue to be put in.
There was a number of trees put in the fall, and there was a number of trees that were kind of healed in with bark mulch for planting this time of year. They haven't been planted yet, but either one I think is a good idea. part of the Arbor Day event also has to be the planting and dedication of a tree to Arbor Day 2025 or something to that effect. Obviously, we're planting a couple at the downtown parking lot, so that's a good opportunity if that's an option we would like, or as Mo said, Travers. There's some additional ones that are going in the ground out there, so that's also an option, or we could do it anywhere else in town.
2 years ago, the Arbor Day planting was out at Lakeview Park. It was a Western white pine. It was in conjunction with Native Plant Society's native plant sale.
Oh, awesome.
That we had. But I mean, I think wherever a tree's being planted, that's the place to have it.
Yeah,
And
I kind of like the idea of the downtown parking lot. I hadn't thought about that as like doing our event there, or we don't have to necessarily do it there. We could do it across the street where they do the farmer's market and, you know, dedicate one of the trees in the parking lot if we wanted to. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that's kind of highlights how, you know, city and staff and commission all work together and, you know, make that project happen and, you know, maintain trees in the space, which, you know, probably didn't have to happen. So I think it's a good idea.
could have it in conjunction with the farmer's market day, because then you have a lot of people present.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And you got the stage and the mayor could be there. On stage.
Yeah, I like that idea. Is there a preference for farmers markets Wednesdays and Saturdays? Is that right?
Saturday.
Saturday, do
Yeah.
it on a Saturday?
Probably much busier on Saturdays, more people.
Any way we get city staff there on a weekend.
I spend most of my weekends in the summer camping, so
Okay.
no, I would absolutely be there, of course. I think that's a good idea. We can, you guys want to choose a date? Do you want to table that for now and pick it up a little bit later on?
Do you know when the parking lot be ready for planting?
End of May, likely.
Okay. That'd be a good month. to
Yeah.
do it.
I don't know that we necessarily want to do it in like July or August because it'll be hot out there, but like end of May's a good idea, early June, something
Yeah.
like that.
It's a better time to plant.
Yeah. When does the farmer's market start? After Memorial Day?
May. Starts the first Saturday, May.
First in May. Okay,
First May through the second week of October.
okay.
So they'll be going.
Do you guys want to define a date now, or do you want to kick around that idea?
You're doing
First,
early
last
camping.
I'll be available. I was just joking.
I go to the farmer's market, like, I'll be there. No. Well, 24th is Memorial Day. That's usually a pretty busy weekend at farmer's market downtown.
think that's a good thing, or maybe it could be too busy.
Yeah, the parking lot might be pretty.
Oh, yeah.
That,
Conflicting
people be-
activities, especially holiday weekends.
when's it supposed to be finished?
Middle of May.
Oh, but, so we have to wait a little bit.
Well, farmer's market, morning through, it doesn't go all day.
1 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, early after.
I think it's long. I mean, the 31st is after Memorial Day.
I am just checking. It doesn't matter. I'm a member of the ILRCC, Idaho Lands Resource Coordinating Council with Idaho Department of Lands. We have quarterly meetings. We haven't set our May-June meeting date yet. We had a doodle poll last week for whichever date we ultimately decide upon will naturally be the time that meeting is also taking place, just because that seems to be how it works. But it looks, either one is fine with me. Like, you know, earlier in, or kind of middle end of May, or I like that June 7th weekend as well.
June 7th is the Native Plant Society's plant sale at Lakeview.
Could we tie those together at all, you think?
It has been done in the past, but
But at
but it's,
Lakeview,
yeah, but it's at Lakeview, so that probably wouldn't be a good.
Does that go all day or is it?
Usually goes till about noon. But it sells out pretty quick.
What kind of attendance does that get?
Oh.
And yeah,
I would say that, Lakeview Park's a great spot for an event, because you're in the shade and, there's all sorts of benefits to that. We could maybe do it on the same day and do the actual event, host the event at Lakeview Park. And highlight that our tree planting is taking place in the downtown parking lot, and it's this tree, whichever one we decide upon, and go visit it. If you'd like,
yeah. That's what Maeve did on that 2 years ago.
I like linking it up with the native plant sale. Because I think we get a lot of interested folks. There's a lot of crossover between folks going to a native plant sale and folks that might be interested in an Arbor Day event.
Maybe get the best of both worlds, people coming from the farmer's market and people coming from the plant society sale.
Maybe we could put up a like sandwich board at the farmer's market. Hey, we're doing an Arbor Day event over at Lakeview Park. Come over when you get done at the farmer's market.
That was.
I mean, I could see it either way. I mean, I could see having the event on the park and using the stage and microphone and stuff. And you get a lot of people basically there.
Mhm.
But
Who's on the mic?
Preston is.
not me. No. I thought it was the mayor on the mic.
Or obligating the mayor for stuff.
Well, yeah, that's what, what's his name?
Hey, that's part of the job.
Yeah. Graves, Paul Graves. He did that thing Arbor Day, gosh, what is that, 97, 98?
Late 90s.
Yeah.
Do we need to officially decide a date?
We don't. This wasn't an action item, it was more for discussion purposes, so we could say we wanted, if we like the 7th, we could say June 7th. Final location TBD.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's good.
let's hold that then, and then we can figure out what location we want to do it at next month or something.
Okay, next item, final item, opportunity for general announcements and comments from the commission and staff. Samantha, do you have anything?
Nope.
Did you have to write up the whole last meeting?
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
It's a lot of cumbersome motions.
Yeah.
Her hands are still sore from the
Yeah.
typing.
Normally the minutes aren't that long, even for other. Lot to keep up with. Thank you very much. City staff is always very, very good. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Engineers coming through in the clutch and totally pivot on a design.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice work.
We got that worked out really nicely. I'm pretty confident that it's gonna work out well. Some of the contractors at our pre-bid morning were crumbling a little bit, but nothing that I didn't expect.
They need the experience.
They do.
But also, yeah, we had city staff show up for the last meeting, and they were here for the majority of it, and that's. Yeah, that's admirable, because. We need the help, really.
Yeah. Mose, I've got a couple items.
Sure.
So you'll notice on the top of the agenda this month, our meeting time now says from 3 o'clock to 4:30. Previously, it just was 3 o'clock and was kind of open-ended. At our first meeting in December, Melissa indicated we should really try and stick to that hour and a half time frame. So, this agenda was pretty light and we're doing fine time-wise, but moving forward, let's all kind of keep our eye on the clock as we're going through these agenda items and just making sure we're staying on track so we can wrap up at 4:30 so everyone can go do their thing afterwards. Next is, there was, Paige had sent me an email a couple weeks ago requesting a budget discussion on this council item, or excuse me, on this meeting agenda, today's meeting agenda. I talked through, in the possibilities of increasing our tree budget, forestry budget, whatever you want to define it as throughout town. Basically, we have no additional general fund dollars to dedicate to that. So currently we have $40,000 annually, that's split between 20,000 in our streets crew and 20,000 in our parks crew. Parks maintains trees, obviously in parks and the downtown core, and streets maintains trees everywhere else in Sandpoint. So those budgets aren't mine to play with. I have used them a little bit here and there, but they're more for those guys when, you know, a tree comes down in the middle of the road in the middle of the night and they've got to mobilize to get it removed and, you know, need to rent some equipment, things like that, or what that budget is intended for. With that said, if the commission would like in future budget years, meaning next year, and throughout this year, we can work on developing a 5-year CIP plan, capital improvement plan, which can help us request additional funding in the future. So we have you know, a lot of deferred maintenance throughout town. We've got gaps in our tree canopy. We've got all sorts of need of funding. But if we work on defining a plan as priority 1 through 50 or 1 through 5 or whatever we determine, we could then start to work on budget and basically, here's our packet, here's what we need to move forward in years 1 through 5. That could be a structure for future years, but for right now, the mayor's priority is streets, water and sewer, police and fire. You know, keeping the lights on, keeping everything functioning. There's little extra general fund dollars to dedicate elsewhere, unfortunately. So it's not what I wanted to hear, but it was also something I pretty much knew. We don't have a whole lot of extra money to go around when, you know, our streets need a lot of investment and we don't have it. So bad news, but good news is on Monday or Tuesday, I got an email from Idaho Department of Lands that our IRA grant is back on. It was pulled a month or two ago, and I think the federal government was sued because of that decision. And the way the courts worked it out is that money is available again. So we have our $100,000 grant that we can utilize for some of this work, which is pretty awesome.
So we were awarded it.
Yeah, we were awarded it in like October of last year. We got the final contract documents from IDL via USDA in December or January. And then shortly after getting the contract, we got the notification that the grant funds were postponed, basically. Now they reversed that, so we're back with our $100,000, which is pretty cool.
Excellent.
So, unfortunate that we had to go through that rigmarole, but it's okay. We have the money. So in our December or January meeting, I pulled up, I believe, the way I had broken down that budget, $100,000. Basically, we had a small amount of money dedicated to new tree planting, some of which is going in at Travers. We had money for hazard tree pruning or removals and money for general tree maintenance. And then about $40,000 or $50,000 of that was for update of our tree inventory, which is badly out of date. So I'm likely going to re-engage Planet Geo, who does the tree inventory via PG Cloud, if you poked around on there. So we can get that in the works and then we can figure out what our priorities are for hazards or maintenance or new plantings or what have you. So bad news on one end, good news on the other.
Any update on the Cedar Street, road project?
Not yet. There was a city council open house special meeting 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we held the workshop to talk about what that should look like, and ultimately, the conclusion was that we need to go back to the public and get some more input before we move forward. So it's not gonna be happening this summer. There was significant talk in that meeting about that silver maple and the grove of aspens next to it, kind of just west of the library on the south side. So that, I think, will be a design consideration moving forward. One of the specific asks for staff was to get an estimate, like an actual engineering estimate of how much it would cost to work around those and keep them. Pending the price tag, obviously there's a price that we won't do that, but that's where we're at after that workshop.
The aspens in the homeowner's yard or the ones further to the west?
In the homeowner's yard, right?
Yeah. It's that grove in on the south side of Cedar,
Yeah.
a little bit east of that, big maple.
Right.
Maybe 3 or 4 properties east of there.
And in the public outreach we did before, that homeowner did indicate they wanted to keep that grove of trees. They call it their front yard forest or something like
I
that.
think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, perhaps there's a possibility that we could ask them to dedicate a little bit extra right away, so we could divert a sidewalk around. But there was also discussion of having a bike path on that south side, so we would need more right away for that as well. So I think it's kind of premature to talk too much about what it's gonna look like ultimately right now, but the takeaway was that it's not gonna happen this summer as planned. That money's gonna get rolled over to probably next summer, and then it's gonna go back out to the public for more open houses to kind of pitch some of these ideas that council came up with in that workshop.
Several competing interests there that some may not be compatible with one another. So
Exactly.
interesting to see how that shakes out through the workshop process.
Yeah.
So if internally, if there's any decision, meaning we're gonna proceed and go out to bid this fall, or we're gonna wait until April of 2026 or whatever. If there's any of those kind of clarifying things that come out, I'll update the commission when I find that information.
And if you guys did have specific things that you wanted to make a recommendation about, feel free to put that on your agenda to have an action item to make a formal recommendation to council. I think that would be very valuable in our decision making.
Yeah, I'd be into that. I mean, we went through that. Oh, like we went through just about every single tree.
I think we did.
Yeah.
Cause we were kind of cross-referencing basically the trees to be removed. On the plan set with kind of a street view walk. When we were doing that, so we could obviously pick that discussion back up if it was appropriate and the commission wanted to. We could have a meeting in the field. I'm not sure quite how we do that. I think Melissa thought there might be some structure for that in some way. But that's an option if the commission wanted to do that as well.
I'd want to see, I guess, numbers as far as, you know, cost related to saving these and working around them versus taking them out, you know, and it's like, see if it's even realistic in the budget or not. You know, so there'd be no use in spending too much time on something that'd be all for naught, right, anyway.
Yeah. And this is not me advocating one way or another. That maple, for example, you know, quite large. The way the current design the current iteration of the design has basically the curb running through the base of that tree. So that requires, saving that tree requires shifting the road to the north. If you do that, and with shallow rooted maples, you're talking about ballast blocks and things like that. Point is, I wouldn't be surprised if that cost for preservation of that tree was something like $50,000 or $75,000. That gets really, really expensive in a hurry. So, nonetheless, that some of that will be, I think some of that, which direction the commission wants to go, I think will be informed by when those costs come in, like you were saying, Chase.
My gut feeling is you guys are gonna be tasked with, pinching pennies with, the wastewater treatment upgrade in the pipeline and, these other critical infrastructure. It's like it might be tight.
Sure, and so for context, that was about almost $2 million slated for that project, so 50,000 is, I don't know, is that like less than 1%, but, 2.5%. Anyway, one of the changes that the council made during that workshop was reducing the width of the road. And the public works director indicated that road base is one of the biggest cost drivers. So reducing the road by 10%, was it? Well, down to 10.5. So about 10%. We'll see a 10% cost savings in that road base and asphalt cost, just the raw materials going into it. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces on that price tag. 50,000 is a lot, but also in the scale of a $2 million project, it's not that much. We also discussed, like Eric said, there is, routes that you would have to protect. We also discussed the traffic calming measures to be used, and in addition to routing the road to the north, you could potentially use a traffic table that would allow the road to go up and over the routes rather than cutting through them. So I think there's a lot of different possibilities, and it's kind of too soon to headway on that project before it goes back out to the public to see what they want, and then comes back as some sort of a preliminary design for us to look at, send recommendations to council. But obviously there is a price tag at which that tree's not saved.
Would you,
What that price tag is.
would you be looking at any kind of right of way acquisition, like shifting that whole setup to the north?
It's possible, but I would say extremely unlikely because right-of-way acquisition is expensive.
Yeah,
And of course,
Is that what it would require, moving the road far enough to the north to not interfere with that maple or not?
Possibly.
Possibly.
No, I think the right of way on the north side is quite a bit further than where the road surface is right now. So it's almost in favor of that tree.
Yeah,
Okay, so the right of way skews to the north anyway.
right.
currently.
And that homeowner on the south indicated that they wanted to keep it, so they might be willing to work with us on the right of way. But yeah, on the north, there's actually quite a bit of right of way. I think they were looking at 6 to 8.5 foot planting strips on both sides, so that's a lot of room to work with. You might end up with a planting strip that's only a couple feet wide on that north side, but then it can spread back out to the uniform width as soon as you pass the tree. So
Is there on-street parking allowed on Cedar?
it will not.
It will not.
That was something that was never in the design.
Trying to pull up the right-of-way here if anyone would like to look at it.
It was kind of a cool exercise. Holly gave us all, the public works director gave us all these little like a bike lane at 3 feet and a 12-foot car lane, or a 10-foot car lane. So we were able to play with that right away a little bit and say, well, this is all the right away you get. So how do you want to use it? We can allocate it to planting strips, we can allocate it to bike lanes, we can make a 6-foot sidewalk or a 10-foot sidewalk, But I do think there is the right of way there. I think it's more about how do we save the roots, because obviously a tree that big, it's got a pretty extensive root network.
The silver maples are also riparian area trees in most of the country. It's a little different in North Idaho because we have different tree species, but in the, coastal areas of the country, the Midwest, the Southeast, they're riparian area trees, which typically means, and I suspect this one's the same, typically has a shallower root structure that's more robust, closer to the surface. Maples are like that anyways. And mix in a riparian maple, my guess would be you're gonna find something like, 60 to 80% of the roots are within 18 inches of the surface or something like that.
It'd be interesting to see, considering that root system has already been covered with asphalt for much of that tree's lifespan. So I don't know if that changes it at all.
It's riparian, I mean, yeah, those roots are moving laterally, because it wants its feet wet.
Yeah.
Knows how far they go.
I will say that, and this does not necessarily have any bearing on this tree because different environments, but when I worked for a county parks department in Ohio, we built a fair amount of paved trails for ADA access. So there was, accessible routes as well as, like natural surface trails if you wanted to walk on that. And when there was silver maples adjacent to them, we removed every silver maple because they destroy your trails. They destroy your asphalt surface. With that said, we're in North Idaho, we're not in Northeast Ohio. So different climate, different, same tree, but different location. So it's going to operate a little bit differently perhaps, but something to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we do have those two big silver maples right outside of the parking lot that we were just discussing, but right, like inches from Church Street. So it's interesting. And are you aware of their like heaving or anything on the street surface there?
They are not that I recall, but we have like Norway maples all throughout town are causing major sidewalk damage for the same reason.
Yeah.
So it's tree specific, right? Not every silver maple is going to destroy asphalt, nor is every Norway maple, but some of them will,
Sure.
depending on where they're planted and, all those other things.
I'd say if this was a new road, I'd be a lot more concerned about that tree, but since it's already covered with asphalt, maybe it'll survive. I don't know.
So I'm kind of zoomed in here. I think this is the silver maple. This is the right of way line right here and the right of way line on the north side here. This is where, no, actually it's not. The willow is over here. I was gonna say the willow is at that corner. It is not. So there is, let's see. Our right of way width there is approximately 60 feet. So. Yeah, with all that said, if there's any update internal regarding this project, I'll make sure the commission's aware.
Good. Any discussion? Oh. All right. I'll give you a minute to speak.
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yeah, my name is Brad Smith. I'm a city resident. Just kind of curious about what you guys are up to because I like trees and like plants and stuff. And I also have a particular project idea that may not be necessarily realistic because I think it involves ITD right of way, but the stretch of Highway 2 between Boyer and Division on the north side of the road is like just a long corridor of just weeds between the bike path and the highway. And I think it'd be really awesome if there's trees in that corridor to make the part of town that a lot of people drive through a little visually more appealing and provide more shade to the bike path. And I also recognize that's a big expense potentially, but I wanted to put the idea on the table and just see even like in the realm of possibility.
I don't know if we want to get much of a discussion about it, but I'm pretty sure it is ITD.
That is ITD right away, and that's also a conversation I've had with the mayor. He also wanted to do that. I think it would be fantastic. There's a couple hurdles to cross there. One is planting trees on property that is not Sandpoint's. Of course, ITD could give you approval to do that. They could also come through at any point and cut them down if they wanted to, because it's their property. But that's not as big of a hurdle. The larger hurdle is trees will not live in Sandpoint without established irrigation. We have no irrigation down there. It could be installed, but there's of course cost associated with that. And running irrigation for I don't know, approximately a mile, maybe a little more than that. Point is, we share that idea.
Yeah.
There's some logistics and details to figure out and funding, of course, to figure out, but that's the conversation we've had internally as well.
I have some relationships with Idaho Forest Group, and I might be able to get some conifers donated, so they wouldn't be, deciduous trees that, people might plant in their yard or something, but if you planted conifers and they got established well enough, then you wouldn't need to aerate long term. So that's a potential option that I could help out with if there's interest.
I think there's some movement towards ITD doing a corridor project there because of the amount of traffic is.
It's just a matter of time before that becomes a minimum of 3-lane.
Yeah.
highway, which is gonna, chew up a lot of the space that it's open and tight.
But that would be the opportunity for a bigger project with irrigation, et cetera, because, well, like on Fifth Avenue, that kind of stretch didn't look anything like it does now, years ago, so. And I think every one of those trees was planted at least twice. The first group didn't survive but I think there's a lot of people in the public that are very interested in that stretch being. Because there's big ditch, there's no sidewalk, you can't cross, you can't go from the bike path across Highway 2 anywhere until you get to a very dangerous intersection at either end. And that's one very deep roads. Yeah,
They're all angled, the streets are all angled
Yeah.
on the highway.
so the multimodal master plan, that's discussed quite a bit, and
I hope that doesn't become 5 lanes like that. But a 3-lane within a nice buffer between the highway and the bike path could still be a place for some trees and a little bit.
yeah, I sometimes I take kids to school in the morning and I wonder how it hasn't been done long ago.
Well, I
Because it's so
feared
busy.
for years about my daughter crossing over to go to Washington Elementary because we're on the north side of the highway. She would cross there in Michigan.
Yeah,
And they do have the lights, but it doesn't always stop.
And I head out of here around lunchtime, frequently to grab lunch somewhere. And if I head out towards Highway 2 from City Hall here, it's the same time that the high school's out. And there's a number of kids that are loading up in the car and driving over to Dairy Depot for lunch, but there's even more that are walking. And they're darting across Highway 2. It makes my head spin. And every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to look. It just terrifies me.
and so the bike path is ITD property?
The bike path might be ours. But I can't recall.
And it's
Except
we,
for just the very.
Oh, it is ITD.
Jack in the Box there is actually IDL surprisingly, but
Yeah, the bike path is on ITD right away, so the right of way line's right here.
so there's a little space between the bike path and the right away.
It's maintained by the city.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And just for comfort of users of that path, like if that's your only factor you're considering, that having trees on the south/east side of that trail is gonna make a huge difference when it's hot and you're riding a bike or walking down, the multimodal path there.
The other reason why buffer when the highway ultimately gets expanded is the ITD plows throw snow on the portion of the path when you get down in Dover where it comes right next to the highway, so you need like a space. So the snow doesn't get thrown on the path.
Yep.
Anyway, that's, that's a soapbox, but that's my sort of dreams to have some trees through that corner and make it look better, because
I think a lot of people
it's a
have
big
that-
eyesore right now.
have that dream, for sure. Cause that is pretty ugly along there.
I mean, I'll freely admit, I thought about going out and planting trees by myself, but I'm not, I was like, I should probably ask. permission.
Gorilla tree.
I think the topic of building height is gonna come up, so if we raise that by quite a bit, then that might be a little more shade.
These are pretty big buildings outside.
Yeah, I'm joking, I'm sure that'll be a very unpopular.
Anyways, thanks for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for the idea.
Okay, no more business, last call, all right. We'll now adjourn the meeting, 4:27, right on. Early.
Good job, guys.